And hi, everyone. I am Melissa Sawyer, Senior Associate Director and Operations Manager in Undergraduate Career Development Center at Bentley, and have coordinated this Listen and Learn session for you on actuarial science and careers. Along with me today, we have an esteemed panel of alumni that we're going to hear from. And many of you probably also know Emmy Roth, who has joined the conversation today. And looking forward to sharing some great information with you. So to get us started, I'm going to go through the panelists, have each of them introduce themselves, share their name, their, excuse me, their company, their position title, along with whether they're in insurance versus consulting, the area that they focus in on, and touching on the exam process and where they stand with that as well. So I will just call out as I see people on the screen. So Kara, can you start for us?
Yep, so I'm Kara. I just graduated from Bentley last year, so I'm only 6 months into my career. I work at Willis Towers Watson, and I do international retirement consulting. For the exam process, I'm still on my 4th exam, which is where I was when I left Bentley. So hopefully I'll wrap that one up soon.
Great, thank you. Kaylin, can you go next?
Sure. So I'm Kaylin. I graduated from Bentley in 2016. So I have been with John Hancock for over 5 years now, or just about 5 years. I'm in the rotational program there, so I'm currently in my 3rd role. And right now I'm working on long-term care insurance. It's kind of a unique role I'm in. We're focusing on solutions to try to minimize our long-term care claims. So there's like a good mix of analytics and innovation with that. And then John Hancock is life insurance, not consulting. A little bit more in depth as to why I chose life insurance as opposed to consulting. I guess it really came down to the internship. I just had a great experience at John Hancock, and that's kind of why I ended up joining full time. And I think a lot of people probably have similar answers when it comes to that. Let's see, exam process. I am currently on my 2nd FSA exam. And when I left Bentley, I had just taken MLC, and that was my 4th exam.
Great, thank you. Rachel.
Hi, I'm Rachel. I graduated about 2 years ago now, in 2018. And when I left Bentley, I just passed my 4th exam. I've been working at Milliman, which is a consulting firm, for a little over 2 years now. And I'm done with exams, so I'm just waiting on like one final requirement to become an FSA. And I just got my CERA last week. So it was an exciting month. I had one internship when I was at Bentley that was in insurance, and then through like the interview process, I really liked the group of people who are working at my office, and I think that's what drew me to like this office. And then consulting was what this office did, so then I was in consulting. My role, I'm an associate actuary at Milliman, and so my role right now is primarily a pricing role. We do a lot of like various projects throughout the year, but this time of year I'm pretty focused on like Medicare work or prescription drug plan pricing.
Great, thank you. Jeff.
Okay. Hey, I'm Jeff. I graduated like 3 years ago. Wait, was it 3? 4. Let's go with 4 years ago from Bentley. And I'm at Liberty in Boston. It's a really good option. That's very local to where you're going to school. And so Liberty does P&C insurance, so it's not consulting, and it's property casualty insurance, which I chose because, one, I just really liked my internships there. I did a couple of them, and also it has like incredibly good work-life balance, a big focus on employee engagement through like ERGs, super strong like exam support, and I don't know, just a great place to work. In terms of the exams, I had 3 when I finished Bentley, and I'm actually, during this hour between 2 and 3 Eastern, we're getting the results for the exams from the CIS, and I'm waiting on the results for my final exam, which I took in December. So if I look distracted, either extremely happy or extremely sad, you will know why.
Well, hopefully this will take that off your mind for a moment, but please interrupt and share the news when it comes through.
If it's positive.
Julia.
Hi, everyone. I'm Julia. I graduated from Bentley in 2018, and then I started working at KPMG in the New York office in October of 2018. So I've been there a little over 2 years. My role is a senior associate, and I'm in consulting. So what I like about it is that I've been on a variety of different projects since I started. Typically, for the months of January and March, we do audit assist. So we assist our audit team at KPMG with, recalculation of reserves for life insurance products for our clients. I'm in the life and annuities practice at KPMG. The reason I chose life and annuities was I had an internship where I did pensions. It was a wealth actuarial internship at Buck Consultants, and I really liked it. So I looked into similar roles, and pension actuaries are, I guess, it's less prevalent to find roles like that rather than life and annuities and health insurance and P&C. But since I liked it, I wanted to go down the SOA route, and that's how I found the life and annuities role at KPMG. In terms of exam progress, I had 2 exams when I graduated Bentley. I had FM and P. And since I graduated, I had taken the remaining 4 preliminary exams for my ASA. So I got my ASA in September of 2019, and now I'm starting to study for my first FSA exam.
Great. So, since we were just touching on the exam process, but maybe we talk about that for a few more minutes. Obviously, you didn't leave Bentley with everything done. Some had more exams than others when you graduated. How have your employers supported that exam process for you? I know that there are rumors out there from time to time that insurance supports your exams more than consulting does, or so if you can just share a little bit about the support that you've had during the exam process, that would be great. Jeff, why don't we start with you, because you said Liberty has been great as far as the support for the exams.
Yeah, sure. So they are really good. We actually track our exam hours every week, and the chief actuaries receive reports if we don't take all of our hours. And so it's a huge problem if you don't take your fully allotted hours before the exam. So they're very, very serious about you taking all of your hours. Also, because my starting class at Liberty was around 20, 25 actuaries, there's a lot of students that are studying for all the same exams. And so we have Teams pages for each of the exams where we chat about all of the questions. We post practice exams, we post materials that you need. So there's a lot of support in terms of materials, and then also the hours. And I know there's some stats out there, but I'm pretty sure we have a pretty high pass rate. I don't know the numbers though, sorry.
Great, thank you. Julia, how has KPMG helped you out?
So I think they have a really great study program. They had really vamped it up in July of 2019. So like right before I started, which was great for me. But so they give you allotted study hours per exam. It doesn't sound as strict, not strict, but as organized, I'd say, as Liberty, like Jeff was talking about, because the chief actuaries like don't get reports if we don't take all our hours, but we are encouraged to take all of them. We have to submit them all for approval. And what I found is that the people I work under, if they know I have a study date, like they don't bother me with emails, they don't bother me with any work, or if I say something like, oh, I have a study day Friday, but I can just work on this for an hour. They're like, no, take your study day. So they're really good about like making sure you're focusing on studying. And there's like compensation awards after you pass exams. And another thing I've heard with some of my clients who are insurance companies is their program sometimes, like, I don't know if this is just specific to the clients I've worked with, but that they've, if you fail like a certain amount of times, you might be out of the program or something like that. But at KPMG, they give you, like, they reimburse you for all your materials for your first like 3 attempts. You have the same amount of study time for your first 2 attempts. So they, especially in recent years, have like just really tried to push people passing their exams. And I think they've had more success since they've implemented this program. So yeah.
Sounds like you got in at the right time. Nice. Kaylin.
Sure. So John Hancock is pretty similar to what has already been mentioned in terms of exam support. So we do also get study hours. It varies by exam, the amount that we get. So the longer the exam, the more hours you get. But it's very generous, though. There's plenty of study time. I would say it covers roughly about a third to a half of the total study time I put in for an exam. First 2 attempts, you get the same amount. Third attempt, you get half the amount. And then any attempts after that, you are considered out of the student program, meaning you don't receive support. However, you do get reimbursed once you pass. So like if you end up purchasing another study material, you do get reimbursed afterwards if you pass. They pay for all the materials up front on your first attempts. And again, it's not quite as, again, I don't want to use the word strict, but with Liberty, we don't track things and report them up to the chief actuary. But similar to KPMG, all the managers are very aware of the exam process since most of them are actuaries themselves. So they definitely encourage us to take study hours, try not to interrupt us when that is happening. And study hours are very flexible. So however it works best for the student is how we can take our hours. So if you're someone who likes to crunch in the last, 2-3 weeks of studying and you want to kind of back end your hours, you are able to do that, although it generally isn't recommended. But it's pretty flexible depending on who you are and what your workload is at the given time. I think that covers it, but let me know if anyone has any questions.
Great, thank you. Kara?
Yeah, so our study program is fairly similar to what's been mentioned too. We get an allotted amount of study time for, depending on the exam, how long it is. And then ours works, whereas your first attempt, you get the full amount of hours. The second attempt, you get half those hours. And then the third attempt, you don't get any hours, but they'll still cover the cost of the materials in the exam. And then similar to what Kaylin was saying, if you say get removed from the study program, once you pass, they will reimburse you for everything. But most people that doesn't happen to, because they're very generous with the amount of hours. And like the other companies mentioned, people are very cognizant of when you're taking an exam. They're not going to push a lot of work onto you. They are very aware that, you have this exam coming up. So people are really nice about that. And they definitely encourage you to take all your hours. And again, it's not as strict. No one's really watching to make sure you do, but most people end up doing it because you do need it. But yeah, it's a really helpful process.
Great. Rachel, anything else to add?
Sure. So I think pretty much the same stuff that everyone said. Our program's a little more flexible and less like strict about sittings and past like number of attempts, and like we don't have a formal program where like you would ever get kicked out, but you would like after a third attempt have to pass before you get reimbursed for any materials or the exam fee. We also have we have study hours and they're written out. My office, like each Milliman office comes up with its own program, and my office does have an unlimited PTO policy. So you're able to like use study hours if you're using like PTO. So we do have like allotted hours, but essentially you can take as many hours as you need. And I think another unique thing about Milliman is we don't really look at like taking a certain number of exams per year, especially because our work is so client driven that if there are times of the year where it's really busy, people can decide to like not take an exam. And then at other times of the year when it's less busy, people can take more exams closer together. And so it's not uncommon to take 2 exams very close to each other and be studying a lot in one half of the year and take more study hours than you may be able to take like if you were only taking 1 exam and taking those allotted hours. And then maybe the other half of the year, you're not taking any study hours. So I think it's more fluid than maybe what else has been described.
Okay, great. Rachel, why don't we stick with that thought as far as, parts of the year might be more busy than others. So this time around, if you all could share a little bit about what a day in the life is like, and what students might be able to expect should they pursue opportunities in a company like yours. Rachel, do you want to take that one to start?
Oh, yeah, sure. So yeah, my office does a lot of work for Medicare, and because of that, our busier time of year is like starting right now through the first week of June. So a typical day in this time of year, if you're like wanting to work overtime and like working on a Medicare team, the hours are definitely longer. I would say like 10-hour work days are pretty common this time of year if that's something you're looking for. And our office is flexible in like what your desired work-life balance is, impacts like what projects you'll work on. Like people don't ever want you working on projects where you have to work overtime if it's not something you're interested in. But for me, like I'm really looking to like gain a lot of experience, and so working on like these like busier projects is what I like to do this time of year. And typically it's a lot of tasks around like answering client questions and like updating pricing analysis for the Medicare clients we have. So I would say like my day is like, since I'm in more of like a project manager role, it's checking in with like people who are working on the actual analysis and kind of reviewing work as it's getting done, and then finding a way to communicate that to like more senior reviewers, or if something's ready to go to a client, finding a way to communicate that to the client to answer the question they were looking for or to deliver a result that they asked us to work on.
Great, thank you. Kaylin, can you share day in the life?
Sure. So there are a lot of different roles at John Hancock in terms of just within our actuarial program, but also where actuaries go after. So I'm going to try to keep it kind of high level just because it's getting too in detail. It varies so much from role to role. Some roles are more technical than others. Some are busy at quarter end, and some are, more like evenly spread throughout the year. But in general, what I have found common throughout my 3 roles so far it's been like a mix of technical work and I guess just working with people. I work with a lot of different teams and have in all of my roles. So on a day-to-day basis, you can expect to have to reach out to different people, whether that's in with your own team or throughout the company, to try to problem solve different things. And sometimes those are, really like mathy, I guess, problems, but other times it's like something that's more like business oriented, like whether it's profit, like the bottom line, related to reserving, or even just something like more basic with just how the business works in general, or like the claims process. So it's been a good mix of like high level and detailed technical stuff. In terms of the programs that you can expect to work in, I would say for me, Excel is still like the number one. Although there are trends that companies, and John Hancock isn't excluded, that they're kind of moving away from that. So I've actually been doing a lot more in SQL. I know a lot of other departments are working in programs like R and Python and trying to get those incorporated. Like the experience analysis team is an example of that. They're trying to incorporate R into their experience studies. MS Access sometimes is used, although I would say that's almost obsolete at this point. We also use a valuation software called GGY Access. It's similar to some of the other ones out there, but that one is pretty commonly used in life insurance companies, I believe. So yeah, I guess you can expect to work in programs like that, although with a good mix of meetings and emailing and communicating with other people throughout the company on a regular basis.
Great, thanks. Kara.
So the role I'm in is for international retirement consulting. So a lot of what we do is consolidating like results that are produced across the entire world. So a lot of what I do is communicating with local actuaries in different countries and collecting their results and reviewing and asking them questions. And then our the main result that we produce is like a year-end accounting result for their pension plans. So for most companies, since their year end is December 31st, January is like our busiest time of year. So we just finished up that busy season, and like things are slowing down now. But so mainly it's just reviewing what other local actuaries have done, converting that into US GAAP, and then communicating with local actuaries to make sure that all our results are aligned, and then finally just communicating that to the client. So a lot of what I do is a lot of emailing back and forth, a lot of dealing with different time zones, because people in Asia, they're working different times than we are, and then just answering questions from clients and coming up with supporting documents. And then now, because we've submitted most of our results, we're answering a lot of audit questions that are coming in from the results that we submitted.
Great, thank you. Julia?
So I'm an advisory at KPMG, but we do audit assist work. So the months of, I'd say like November to end of March are really busy with audit work. So a typical like day in the life is juggling multiple projects, which I like because, sometimes if I'm working on the same thing for a while, I kind of just get bored of it and need a break. So then I could just move on to a different project I'm working on. So it's kind of nice to like switch it up a little bit. So for my audit work, we do audit assist. It's not like actual accounting work, which I don't know about you guys, but I would find pretty boring. But so what we do is we work with the audit team, and we look at the company's financials and their reserves, and we'll sometimes recalculate their reserves, and just kind of make sure that everything looks reasonable to us. So that's typically what the audit work is like. And then the advisory work is, it varies. So I've been on projects where we do like model validation. So Kaylin mentioned GGY Access. So I also work with the GGY Access. When I started working with it, I did like reconciliation work. So I was not really building models, but I think as I get like to a more senior role, you start building models and using those actuarial valuation systems more. Other projects I work on, we're trying to build like a recalculation tool in Alteryx. I'm not sure if you've heard of Alteryx, anyone, but it's been, and at least at my company, becoming more popular. And it's like a self-serving data analytics tool. So our practice is trying to get a lot more involved in data analytics software and stuff. And we have like data literacy programs to get us more involved in that stuff. And I personally find that really interesting. So something I like about, I mean, I don't know, I can't speak to insurance because I've never worked in it, but I know with consulting, I'm on a lot of different projects. And like for example, right now I'm on a project that I've been on since June, and I'm supposed to be on it through June. And I started out doing actuarial work on it, but it's kind of slowed down, and I've now been doing more like project management work. So my manager is like, okay, let's get you off of this and pull you on to a different project where you can work with modeling and build your skill set more. So I kind of like how I can move on to different projects based on like what my interests are. So yeah.
Great. And last but not least, Jeff, day in the life for you.
Hey, yeah, I think the first thing to know is a day in the life is 8 hours, and that's very important. Like obviously there are some days where you may work like one or more, but Liberty is very serious about work-life balance, and 8 hours is very much the expectation and the reality. Also, I'll say like a lot of the strange thing that I found about Liberty that is a little bit different, I suppose, is that actuaries are sort of thrown all around the company that aren't necessarily traditional roles. So I've never been in a traditional actuarial role doing pricing or reserving. I started out doing data science with predictive modeling and like R and Python, and then did reserve, international reserve oversight, similar to you, Kara. And now I do like financial planning, which are all like really helpful to have an actuarial background in, but not actually like traditional actuarial. And I find that really cool. There's still a lot of rotations that are traditional actuarial. Like I have a lot of friends that do reserving and pricing, but it's not 100%. And like if you want to move away from traditional stuff, there's that opportunity. The other thing that's a little bit different about Liberty, I think, is that we're really focusing on developing interpersonal communication skills in our actuaries, because we recognize that we have data scientists that are super technical experts and can do all of these models and like all of that super well. So they're trying to leverage like the insurance business background of an actuary, like more than the technical expertise, which I really like talking to people. And a day in my current life is basically just talking to people all day. And I think that's great. But again, it's not like every role, it's just my experience. And another example of that is like the actuarial department that I'm in really focuses on relationship building initiatives. So like we were given like 2 hours a week just to like grab coffees and really like incentivize building relationships. And so it's quite a like real focus, I would say, for Liberty.
Great. Why don't we shift gears a little bit and think back on your time at Bentley. Are there classes or organizations that you were involved with that you think could benefit students to start thinking about getting involved or taking while they're at school to make them marketable for the opportunities that you all are currently in? Jeff, do you want to take that one first?
Sure. And I was just finally able to refresh and I passed. All exams done.
Congratulations.
Thanks. Now I can be a lot more focused. So at Bentley, obviously all of Emmy's prep classes are incredible and they really did help. And I'm sure that everybody already knows that. I think I also took like this data science class at a grad level that was in R, and that was, I think it's now offered as an undergrad class, and I would highly recommend that because any predictive modeling you're going to be doing will be in R or Python. Maybe I shouldn't say any. A lot of companies use R or Python to do predictive modeling, for example, like detecting claims fraud or using a model to predict a reserve amount. So that was really helpful, I think. And then if there's still like the sort of like Excel and VBA class, and many other on this panel have mentioned that Excel is like a really big skill, and that's very true. And you may think you know Excel, but nobody really knows Excel. Like there's so many things that can be done in it. Even just like formatting in Excel is like a whole nother world, and it can make your analysis like 10 million times better if you know how to format something. And yeah, I think that's all that comes to mind.
Okay. Julia.
Yeah, I second what Jeff said. Obviously, Emmy's prep courses were extremely helpful. I didn't take the prep course for LTAM, but I know that would have helped me because the material on that exam is actually like a lot of what I work with. So not only would have helped me with the exam, but it would have helped me with what I do at work. But I was studying for the exam while I was like starting work. So it kind of that was helpful in and of itself. But yeah, so all of Emmy's prep courses, and then what Jeff was saying, he took an R class. I think that was the data mining class, but I'm not sure if things have changed since there's now a data analytics major or minor. And one class I regret not taking is the Python class. Not like my practice doesn't do a ton of work with it, but if I had that skill, people would have been like impressed, because there are always things you can do with it. And yeah, I'm assuming that there's been some more data analytics classes since I've graduated, since I know that they added a major. So I think any data analytics skills that you can learn before going to work are just super important. And in terms of like organizations, I was never in like a math or actuarial specific organization, but I think just being in organizations in general, like I was in peer tutoring, I tutored in math, I was in service learning, things like that. Like there were actuaries who were involved in that, and I had formed relationships with them because of it. So I think just expanding your network, no matter what the organization is important. And when I went, like when I was at Bentley, the actuarial community was small. I'm assuming it's grown over the past couple of years, but it is a pretty tight knit community because you're all kind of taking the same classes. So I think just keeping those relationships strong is good too, because like I've spoken to people from the actuarial program since I've graduated about our careers and things like that. And if you know someone who's working at a company that you like maybe want to switch to one day, like it's just always good to have that relationship.
Great. Thank you. Kara.
Yeah, I'll second what Jeff and Julia both said. And then I think another really important thing that I did at Bentley was the Traveler's Case competition. I did my sophomore year, and I remember my interview for my internship. That's all I talked about because it was the only actuarial experience I had. So I'm not sure if they still have that going on, but definitely it's like a really good thing to get involved with, especially if you don't have any. Oh,
Can I just interrupt? I just sent an email out. They're holding it this year. They just let us know it's going to be virtual. And any of you first year, second year students who are interested, you need to send me an email by Friday this week. So good timing, Kara.
Yeah, definitely do it because I had an internship actually after my sophomore year, which isn't super common. But I think that competition is definitely like the reason why I was able to get it. So definitely take advantage of that opportunity. And then I also worked in the math lab for 2 years. And even if you don't work there, it's really a good place to like go when things are back in person, or like if they still have like the Zoom sessions, like go to them, because most people who work there are actuarial students. So they're just all good people to know. Like even if they're a couple of years ahead of you, they'll have internships. They'll eventually probably be on this panel one day. So that's like another great thing to get involved with and familiarize yourself with.
Great. Thank you. Rachel?
Yeah, I think definitely all the data skills we've been talking about are great to have. I didn't end up taking many of those or any of those classes, so don't follow my example. But one thing that came up when I was interviewing was my minor. And I actually got a minor in public policy because it was something I was really interested in. I really liked Professor Gulati and took a lot of classes with him. And so I think like any classes, organizations that you're passionate about will help you. You can develop skills outside of the actuarial skills that I'm sure you'll all be exposed to, and find other areas of interest that you can pursue in your career. So I work in a health consulting role, and there's a lot of policies that impact insurance, like the ACA. So I'm still able to like explore that passion, and I was able to use that in my interview to talk about something besides actuarial skills and my actuarial background, which I feel like will help set you apart and like show that you have more interest and like are more well-rounded than the skills from exams and from actuarial internships.
Great. And Kaylin?
Yeah, so I second what everyone has said so far, especially what Rachel just mentioned. Things that like set people apart in terms of courses and stuff tend to stand out when we're looking at a huge group of resumes. So if you have room on your resume, don't be afraid to list out some of the courses that you've taken at Bentley if you think that they would make you unique compared to other people. I know I had quite a number of them listed on my resume when I was applying for internships in full-time positions. And that was a common like conversation starter for during interviews, just asking questions about some of the classes, whether they were math related or not. Another course that has actually come in handy that I wasn't expecting totally, it was either FI 305 or FI 320. The numbers have probably changed, but it's like it was one of the two required finance courses. I was taking my FA, which is basically like a take-home exam. It's one of the requirements for the SOA track. And there was a question on portfolio optimization, and I like did a whole project on that on an FI whatever. So I literally like pulled up the document on my computer and was able to answer that question like real quick. So pay attention in your finance courses, I guess, is the moral of that story. But yeah, another big thing, just attending like events like this. I know it's probably harder these days to network because of, the whole remote situation. But just getting your name out there to people like us, I think it's really helpful. A lot of us, I know I am involved in recruiting, and I see the list of resumes that come in for internships, co-ops, and full-time positions. And if I like continually see your name or your face, that will kind of resonate with us. So networking is really big. And I think this was brought up. The actuarial community is small. So it's pretty easy to keep track of people and know and like remember them from past events. So it's really helpful to attend these things.
Thanks for the plug, Kaylin, and for the support.
Melissa, can I add something?
Sure.
Kind of building on what Kaylin and Rachel said, because I was kind of just focusing on like math and actuarial skills. So they brought up good points. I took this COM 210 class. It was a public speaking class. And I think that's also really important because at KPMG, we have like internal presentations during the summer for like training classes. And they're always trying to get you involved to do presentations at like the SOA annual meeting or the Actuarial Society of New York, like conferences like that. So I think it'd be important to build on your public speaking skills. And now like living in a virtual environment, I think it's important to practice public speaking in person, but also virtually, because I think they're two different things. And I've noticed a difference in my presenting when it's been virtual. So it's something that I can also work on too. So I think that's a really good class, COM 210.
Great point. Thank you. And I would want to say one silver lining of this crazy, messed up world that we're living in is that we have Julia here and Kara here and Rachel here, that they didn't have to travel from New York and Connecticut, because for these programs, if they are in person, a lot of times, you have to fall into the geographical area. So appreciate everybody being able to pop in from where they are sitting. I definitely have more questions to ask, but I want to give the students that are on here the opportunity to ask some questions as well. So feel free to throw a question in the chat or raise your hand, unmute yourself, and you can ask some questions from what you want to hear about. Any questions out there? Isaac, I see your hands up.
Yeah, hi. I remember a lot of you mentioned using Excel quite frequently. And I'm just wondering, I've had some experience with Excel in like an internship setting in the past, but I'm wondering like what exactly you do in Excel, whether it's like dealing with giant data tables and trying to extract some value out of that, or like what?
I can take that. I guess, yeah, for me, it is dealing a lot with large amounts of data. I guess the most common occurrence is like senior management or someone will come to me or my team with a question. Like, let's say, since I'm currently working in long-term care, like what percentage of our claims stem from like nursing home claims? And then we have all of this data, right? And it's not always clean. It's not always straightforward. And we know that we have like all of the pieces that we need to answer this question, but it's really a matter of like, how do we get it from the format it is in currently to a nice summary that's going to make sense for senior management. And so I guess the biggest part is like just thinking through the process of getting from like point A to point B and figuring out how to do it, whether it's using like, I don't know, if statements, VLOOKUPs, sometimes different functions that are not so common. You'll find that Google is a nice, handy friend when it comes to figuring out certain things in Excel that you haven't necessarily done before. And just, I guess, making sure the data is clean, and then making sure your results make sense. So like, I don't know, let's say for that question I do what I thought needed to get done to get the answer, but it's saying, 95% of people, like 95% of our claims are in nursing homes. That's a lot, that's high. And nursing homes are expensive. So I would like right away know that's not right. And then it's kind of backtracking and being like, okay, so what went wrong where? Was it something I did? Is it the data? And I guess just bringing the whole picture together to make sense from the raw data.
I
Can I
think I
just
can
jump in? We have, sorry, Jeff, we have an elective, MA 315, on the books, which is taught, I hope, at least once a year, if not once every other year, which is VBA. It's, Jeff, it stems out of the Liberty course. It's now a 3-credit course. We also have, stemming out of the Liberty course, we have a 3-credit pricing reserving project course, which is offered this spring for the first time, taught by an actuary. And hopefully it will be, I don't know, my wish list is that's offered every 2 years. We'll alternate it with a project course on something else in the alternate years. We've got a bunch of cool things. We've got a machine learning course in the works, undergrad, very cool.
Nice. Those will all be like extremely useful. In terms of the question about Excel, like in my current role, I don't use Excel as much with large amounts of data, but rather to sort of like shape data and like create charts and graphs that are very much like storytelling. In fact, there's a book called Storytelling with Data, which I really like. And like a lot of the work that I do is coming up with proposals around processes or like better ways to do analyses or calculations. And so like I'll use Excel to prepare a proposal, which will include data as well as charts. So like it's sort of like an easier way of putting together a big PowerPoint that takes like half the amount of time because like the data is in there as well. So that's why I think like design and formatting with Excel actually are very important skills to know, because it can very much help your stakeholder sort of interaction.
I can add to that. What Emmy was saying about a VBA course, I think that would be really useful to take. I had not done any work with VBA when I graduated, and now sometimes when I'm looking into like client calculators, like when they recalculate their reserves, sometimes they'll have macros in it. And if I'm trying to figure out what the calculator is doing, I have to like dig through their macro. And I've learned a lot since I've started, but I'm still not really like that knowledgeable about VBA. So having that skill would be useful to, if you find yourself like needing to record a macro or just like looking through it to figure out like what an Excel sheet is doing. Other than that, like I have, like I said, I work with client calculators where they calculate their reserves. So sometimes I will have to be digging through the formulas in their calculator to figure out like, why does this number look like this? Oh, it's pulling from this cell, which is coming from this data source. So that's one thing I do. Another thing is sometimes we'll create our own calculators to recalculate their reserves. Most of those have already been in place for a while, so I haven't really like added to that much. And then a third thing that I use Excel for a lot is like Kaylin and I mentioned before, GGY Access is a actuarial valuation system. And what I've done on a couple of projects is I've created a replicating spreadsheet to replicate what's being done in Access for people that, non-actuaries who don't use that valuation system, but still need to know like what's happening with the business. So I've created spreadsheets that replicate what's being done in Access. So it's a lot of like formulas and problem solving and stuff, which I find interesting. But yeah, just being familiar with all the ins and outs in Excel is important for that.
All right. I received another question that came through the chat, and I'll be interested to hear your thoughts on this. What was it like starting internships for the first time, especially as early as sophomore year? Was it overwhelming? And I can't remember off the top of my head who had internships as of after sophomore year, so jump on in.
I can talk about that. So I had an internship sophomore year. I'd say it wasn't super overwhelming, because as an intern, a lot of people recognize that you don't know a lot of what the company's doing. You don't know a lot of what's going on. So for me personally, my internship was a lot of trainings. It was a lot of trainings and then just kind of like not so much doing too much work, but sitting and watching other people doing work and having them take the time to show you like what they're doing and exactly what they're doing. I don't think my internship was intimidating or overwhelming. I think it was like a really good learning experience. And it kind of showed me that, okay, like this is something that seems interesting. People here are happy. So maybe this is something that I'd like to pursue for my career.
I can jump in on that. I also had an internship after my sophomore year, and agreed, it wasn't too overwhelming. It was a small adjustment, I think, going from like actual schoolwork to work in the real world. It's a lot less like math oriented than you may expect. Like I mentioned, a lot of the like barrier there, I guess, would just be like business knowledge. like terminology like reserves and whatnot. But so I found in the like first half of that internship, I was a bit like hesitant to ask questions or to do anything like beyond what I was being asked to do, just because I was still kind of getting the hang of things. But once I started asking questions, I gained a lot more confidence, and that helped going into my next internship. Just knowing that, I guess to Kara's point, like, you are an intern, you aren't expected to know the ins and outs of everything. So asking questions are usually appreciated. And I guess one piece of advice would be, one, don't be afraid to ask questions. But two, if you demonstrate that you are curious and that you want to learn and do a good job, and that you are able to adapt to different softwares or technology, and that you're picking up the business acumen, I think your manager will like definitely notice that and will have a lot of confidence in you to handle certain tasks, which will in return make you more confident in your work. So definitely don't start out being hesitant, even if you're feeling that way. I think that's pretty normal. Definitely get in there and ask questions if you have any.
My experience, I actually had an internship at Liberty, which was awesome. They have like a really big program. And so I think when you can find those big, like formal intern programs and you get the opportunity to meet a bunch of other actuarial interns, that goes such a long way. Like I'm still really close with a bunch of the interns I met there, and some have like, we've ended up working for the same company now. And I think when you are hesitant to ask questions to your brand new manager, like getting used to working with others and like asking your intern friends questions is also a really good experience in internships to learn how to like problem solve and figure things out. So those programs are definitely a lot of fun, definitely really great. And I don't think it was overwhelming just because it was such like a big organized program. You felt like you're all starting out on the same page. So you all have like a lot to learn together, but it's not much is expected, like Kara and Kaylin were saying.
Emmy, did you have something you wanted to add to that?
No.
No? Okay. A great thing about internships, and always keep this in mind, is they help you figure out what you want to do and what you don't want to do. So taking advantage of those opportunities, and as was mentioned, ask questions. If you finish something and you don't have something to do, make sure that you ask for things to do. Go out and look for what the next task could be versus sitting at your desk and waiting for someone to bring it to you. So those are some things to keep in mind for those internship opportunities as well. Great questions. Any other questions out there from our students? Isaac?
Yeah, so on the topic of internships, I think I heard someone say that getting an internship after your sophomore year is like an uncommon occurrence. Like it doesn't happen frequently. Is that wrong, or?
I could speak up on this one. I had an internship after my freshman year, sophomore and junior years, and it's not like infrequent to do an internship after your sophomore year at all. Like I know a lot of my peers at Liberty have done 2 internships, maybe like around half maybe have done 2, and then the rest of them have done 1.
All right, but that's kind of what I thought. But just as a follow-up, like any tips on getting your first internship?
I can speak kind of to that. When I was a sophomore and applying for internships, I ended up getting a lot of denials because of just they were looking for juniors or people who were rising seniors. Something I did was actually emailed the recruiters too. Even after my application was denied, I would just find the name of the recruiter and email them. And I ended up I applied to a lot, but I ended up getting 2 interviews just from doing that. So I think that's like a really good thing to do, because the worst they're going to say is no or not answer.
I also think like starting, this is just going to be quick, but starting early, like when I had a different internship when I was a sophomore going to junior year. It was a merchandising internship. And then I realized I wanted to do actuarial after that. So I didn't have that internship under my belt. And then I studied abroad my junior year. So I kind of slacked in looking for internships while I was abroad. But I think like a good piece of advice is to start early. Like if you want a summer internship, start in like the prior, like September, October, even like August. See if like Bentley has opportunities available. Just like start as early as possible, because I mean I was surprised at how quickly, or like how early companies started recruiting. So just definitely make sure you like don't miss any deadlines and stuff and stay on top of it.
Yeah, I think most companies I think recruit in like the September through November timeframe for actuarial positions. Also, my freshman year I had an internship. It wasn't specific to actuarial. It was just working at a local like financial services office. But even if you're not able to get an actuarial internship per se your freshman or sophomore year, there are other positions that are still like analytical or finance related that you would probably be more than qualified for. And those are still really useful. Like you get to adjust to the business culture. You do get your hands on oftentimes Excel and just kind of getting a taste for what work in the real world is like, as opposed to just in school. And then the following year, when you're applying for internships, that's then a talking point. And even if it's not actuarial related, when we're looking through resumes and we see any kind of industry experience, it's like a plus mark and a good talking point. So yeah, definitely don't limit yourself just to actuarial opportunities if there are more out there.
Can I also jump in for a sec? So we were actually talking about this before all the students joined in. Unlike Northeastern, we are not a school that for which students do lots of co-ops, but I will tell you over the last 2 or 3 years, more and more of our actuarial students have been doing internship co-ops either fall or spring semester. And particularly for you guys, I assume many of you will be taking summer courses. You might think about, I worry very much about students getting burnt out with coursework. You might think a bunch about maybe next fall. And Kaylin and Rachel, would you consider sophomores for a fall co-op? John Hancock and this Milliman office in Connecticut are probably the source of most of our co-op opportunities. How would you guys consider first terms? Well, they're not even first term sophomores because they will have done summer courses.
Yeah, for sure. Especially, so like our, for co-ops, since you mentioned like Northeastern is the most popular school that has that flexibility. So generally our co-ops are from either Northeastern or up in Canada. And we do like to get a good mix. So when we see other schools, and particularly, in particular Bentley, we get very excited about that. So even if you are not as qualified, maybe in terms of like exams, we almost are willing to like overlook that to get some Bentley students involved, just because we do know like the background, the business background is really helpful. So going off of that, we do have some co-op positions open for the fall. I believe it's like a September start timeframe. And that job posting will be listed hopefully by the end of the month. I don't know if it's going to be on Bentley link or not, but if you're interested, either contact me or keep your eye out. But those should be posted by the end of the month.
Yeah, we have a spring, like I mentioned earlier, the spring is our busy time of year. So my office in particular hires a handful of spring interns. So if that's something you're interested in, like definitely look out for that next fall, when we do like the normal Bentley recruiting, there'll be postings for that. And we don't look super closely at what year you are. We mostly just want to get a sense of like, are you willing to like learn Excel if you haven't worked in it yet? And any other like data skills you have. It's not even an actuarial specific internship, just because we've had trouble finding availability. Like most students are in school that time of year. So it's not focused on like which exams you've passed or like where you are in your, like whether you're a sophomore or a junior. It's mostly focused on like what skills you have or can develop, and you're interested in taking that time off and coming for the internship. And one thing too is like this year we have a much more like diverse group in terms of schools and geographic location, because it's an entirely remote internship. And I know other offices have experienced something similar. So moving forward, that could be like a cool opportunity to find more remote options that are available to you that maybe you weren't able to find before. Maybe there will be like remote part-time opportunities. I know our Boston office has a fall position they sometimes try to fill, but it's really weird timing where it would conflict with your spring and fall semester. So I think as companies are adapting to like this virtual world, those positions are becoming virtual or just more flexible in general to kind of accommodate how things are changing. So like go outside your comfort zone, Google a ton, try to see what's out there. And there's like definitely opportunities, and whether or not you're a freshman or a junior, they're definitely out there.
Great. And just to touch on the recruiting timeline piece, if you didn't participate in we call it the MAT event, so Math, Actuarial, Analytics, and Technology, used to be at night. This past fall, it was done virtually through Handshake, which is actually what we're using now, what used to be Bentley Link. So my guess is that event next fall will most likely still be virtual. Not maybe too early to tell, just trying to think through whether or not that many people in a room first thing in September will be feasible yet. Hopefully at some point it'll go back in person, but that is early September. So make sure that you keep an eye out for information on that, because a lot of the employers that go to the MAT event, some of them choose not to go to our large career fair and just go to that event because they know in going to that event, they're going to see the students that they need to see. So if actuarial is what you are going to be pursuing, make sure that you keep an eye out for that event beginning of fall semester. Okay. All right. Any other questions out there? I want to be cognizant of time. Maybe one other question from the audience, or Emmy, are there questions that I didn't touch upon that you think would be beneficial for the students to hear?
I was just sitting thinking that I'm so glad you've recorded this. There's been a ton of information transmitted. You guys have been fabulous. Absolutely. Oh, apparently my cats are bored. Yeah, a lot of information, and I like the mix. Actually, I have one question, and maybe this is specifically for Kara and Julia and Rachel. So some consulting companies seem to not care very much if their students attain ASA, ACAS, or the FSA, FCAS. Others seem to. Can you guys educate me on why not, and what it's like at your company? Is this something important? Is it more something you're doing for yourself? Is it important to the company? Is it important to you? Is it important to both? Does that make any sense?
Yeah, I can start with that. I think it is important to KPMG, definitely. Um, one of the company I interned at, I could tell it wasn't as important to them. They were more like, oh, we just want you to get your work done. And then if you can get your exams on top of that, that's great. And then they'd have like managers and directors who like only had an ASA or like hadn't even attained their ASA yet, which is like not a thing at KPMG at all. And when I was interviewing too, I could get the sense from companies like, because I had heard that too, like consulting companies want you to be more focused on work rather than getting exams. So that was something I had asked a lot of companies on interviews because I wanted to be at a company that was really focused on exams. And I got the sense from other companies I interviewed with that their work was the more important focus. So when I interviewed at KPMG, I got the sense that they really did focus on exams. And now being here, I can attest to that. And we do like goal setting at the beginning of every year or every fiscal year. And like one of your personal goals is kind of always like pass one exam. And obviously, if you take an exam and fail, they're not going to hold that against you. But they do encourage you to like continue with exams. And like I passed my last exam for my essay in June, and I told everyone like, yeah, I'm taking like like 6-month break before like my next exam sitting. And everyone's like, oh good, give yourself a break. But like if I said, I'm not gonna take exams for like a year or two, they would be like, okay, why? Like, are you doing that? So yeah, everyone there is going for their ASA, FSA. Like I've never really heard of people stopping to take exams unless it's like a little break like I did. But so yeah, that is something that I asked on interviews and that I do like about KPMG.
It's very similar at Millman. People want you to pass your exams and get credentialed. Millman started as an actuarial consulting company, so it's owned by the principals at each practice, which are typically actuaries. It's transitioned to more of like a management consulting company, so we do have non-actuaries that work with us. But if you're not an actuary, you usually have some other type of designation, so like an MBA, or like we have like pharmacists with their PharmD who work for like prescription drug type work. So getting through exams is important. Getting your credentials, you get raises each time you pass an exam and get credentials. So you'll never excel through like your salary brackets quicker than when you're taking exams. And we do have a bonus structure based on your billable time and your billable rate. And that only increases with exams and with getting those credentials. So it's all very important. And there are definitely like people who decide the exam path isn't for them when they find different paths of work and different areas of expertise that may not require it. But I would say that's more of a outlier to the group of actuaries that work at Milliman. And a lot of the work will require credentials, like any type of independent actuarial certification. You need to be an actuary with a certain number of years of experience. We do like a lot of our work stems from that. So it's definitely important and definitely supported throughout the process.
So the team I'm on is kind of, I guess, like on the other end of the spectrum. Exams are definitely really important. But the structure of the team I'm on, we do global actuarial work and then global benefits management and mergers and acquisitions. So about 2/3 of our team are non-actuarial people. So a lot of times people come into our team, pursuing their ASA, but then they end up working on one of those two other sides and end up kind of leaving the actuarial track. And then the role I'm in, I kind of do a little bit of the global benefits work too. So I do a lot of non-actuarial work too. So if I were to stop taking exams, it wouldn't be like a bad thing. It wouldn't go against me. But obviously getting exams, we have the same thing where your compensation increases. We have a bonus structure around it. So it's definitely something that, I'm going to keep moving forward with. But if you get so far with exams and then decide that you don't want to do that anymore, there's still a place on our team, which personally I like because it kind of takes the pressure off needing to pass exams so quickly to move up in your career, there's other ways to do that without just exams.
Great. Thank you. All right. One thing that I wanted to make sure that I mentioned is that for those of you students that are on here, if you have not had a class with Emmy yet, or you have not connected with Emmy yet, if you are here at this presentation and you are considering this as a career path, get to know Emmy. She is a huge advocate for you, for Bentley, for this program, and you should get to know her and she should get to know you. So keep that in the back of your mind. But again, I want to be cognizant of time for our panelists and for students who probably potentially have class starting at 3:30. So if we could go around with final words of wisdom from our panelists, if there's anything that pops into your head that you didn't get a chance to mention in the questions that were asked along the way, what would you have wanted to know if you look back on yourself in school as a first or second year student? And I will let you unmute yourselves so that I won't put pressure on somebody to get us started.
I can get started. I guess for me, I didn't realize how much emphasis was put on like unique things about candidates that are non-actuarial related. So I was like very focused on passing exams, maintaining a high GPA, like taking math courses, like programming, like finance courses that I knew were going to be like directly related to my career. Which, I mean, those are obviously still important. But at this point, it's like a lot of candidates are doing the same thing, right? So now when I'm looking at resumes, if I see something like really interesting or like a club or a second major or a minor, or some like really big volunteer event that I see they're heavily involved in, that like really helps them stand out. And going into the interview, I'm like, I can't wait to ask them about this, because I'm gonna, if I have 10 interviews in a day, I'm gonna hear about Excel about 10 times. But those unique things are like the parts that I like look forward to, that can really help differentiate yourself from other candidates. So yeah, going in, I was trying to differentiate myself by having as many actuarial related like check marks on my resume. I wish I knew that just having like a heavy involvement in some club that was totally unrelated to actuarial would have like an equal impact.
I would say definitely like always be networking and reaching out to people about opportunities. Both my internships that I got, neither of them were through like my application. They were both just from reaching out to different people and asking them about like any opportunities and trying just to get to know like the business. So I think that's like something that is just a really helpful thing to do. And like I said before, the worst thing someone's going to do is not answer you. So definitely just keep reaching out to people, keep connecting on LinkedIn, sending emails. That's like the biggest piece of advice I think I could give.
I think one thing that's important to think about that I never really thought about is, as much as you guys will all work hard to try to get these internships and get full-time opportunities, like make sure you take the time to get the experience or take the classes to know what it is that you want. There's so much out there. There's non-traditional actuarial roles. There's consulting versus insurance, and there's like the different health and P&C and life. And none of them is like the best one to go for. Like you have to find what you're interested in. And when you're applying to like these internships and full-time positions, like as like a new hire or an intern, is a really unique opportunity for you to shop around. And then once you do have your first job, anytime you move from then on will be just a little more challenging to find an opportunity that fits for you. So like make sure you're taking advantage of that and finding like what's right for you. No one ever wants you to like go to an internship if it's not going to be something that you're going to be happy doing. It may take a few tries. Like you may have one internship that you don't really like, and then maybe the next time you try to get one in a different area. But just remember, like, check in with yourself and make sure you're doing like what's good for you on top of trying to like fit the bill for all of the applications you're trying to use and apply for.
I think I'll repeat the networking thing. It's something where it's so important to your career and also just personal happiness that you know people and that you feel close to them. And like, for example, if you end up interning at the company you work full-time at, you'll probably meet like 40 people and you'll forget all of them over the course of your senior year. And then you're going to come back and they're going to remember you and you're not going to remember them. It's going to be super awkward. Speaking from personal experience. So keep track of the people that you worked with and that you liked, and just like reach out and say, hey. And it's like, it's easy to think like to be like, oh, that's so cold and brutal, but it's also like, I shouldn't say also, it's rather just being a human being. And I think that's definitely a part of the job in addition to the exams and the math skills.
Yeah, I don't have too much to add because everyone covered it really well. I do want to emphasize Melissa's point that you should go to Emmy just to get to know her. Go to her with anything, like anytime you're unsure about what classes to take, what should you apply to, how do I get a job in New York, like just go to Emmy for everything. She's like helped me plan out my schedule. She's like helped me with everything. If you get a bad grade on her test, go to her and she'll go over all of the questions with you. Like she's connected me with people that have graduated who are working in New York, like to try and help me get a job here, because it's not as easy trying to get a job in New York if you're at Bentley, because a lot of the recruiting there is from Boston. So yes, Emmy's the best, so go to her with everything. And then, I mean, I do second what everyone else had just said. Another thing I want to add is, obviously taking exams is important, but definitely make sure to give yourself a life and like not only focus on schoolwork and exams or like working and exams, because you need that downtime. And when I had started working at KPMG, all I did was work and study and I was miserable, and I ended up passing the exam, but I was like, I'm never doing this again. I need to like make plans and like try and like finish study goals before I go out to do those plans. And then I did that for my next exam and I ended up getting like a better score on that. And I think it's just really important to make time for things that you enjoy and that things are, because obviously being an actuary is very, you know, with the exams and everything, it's very time consuming. It's like a lot of hard work, but definitely just make sure you have that downtime and make time for like family and friends.
Thank you. Thank you all for your time, for your expertise, for sharing your experiences. If there are students on this call that are interested in continuing the conversation, are you open for them to reach out to you on LinkedIn and connect that way? All right. So I had a question about that in the chat, and I think I saw everybody nod their heads yes. So make sure you jot down the names. Kaylin?
Yeah, I was going to say also feel free to share at my email address at least.
Okay.
Probably a bit responsive on like through my work email than LinkedIn. So feel free.
Okay. Are other people okay with me sharing emails?
Yep.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay. So if you are on this call, I have you on the Zoom report, and I will share names and emails after this event. So once again, thank you everybody for coming, students and professionals, and for sharing your insight, asking questions, and I look forward to continuing the conversations and learning more from all of you as we go on. So thank you. Have a great day, everyone. And I look forward to keeping in touch.
Thanks all. Bye.
Thanks, Melissa. Good
Thank
luck with
you.
everything, everyone.
Thank
Thank you
you.
all.
Congratulations,
you.
Jeff.